Hello everyone, Mr. Happy here, and in this video we're going to be taking a look at a round of interviews that were released from a bunch of JP media sites. Whenever there's like a media rush of stuff from JP sites, it's almost always like the same information because they all kind of sit in like a round table thing and report on the same stuff. But Game Watch, Famitsu, 4Gamer, and I think maybe one or two other sites all posted this pretty lengthy interview that they did somewhat recently that talks about patch 6.5. It talks about the Fall Guys collaboration, talks about Criterion rewards again, which is something I just made a video about not too long ago. And I just want to use Game Watches, Google Translate it and do the best that we can. I tried a bunch of the different sites, looked at all the Google Translates, and I think Game Watches ended up turning out the best. So without further ado, let's just quickly speed through the topics. And by speed through, I mean welcome to the next 25 minutes of your life. It just starts with a basic introduction, about how we have patch, it says, look at the auto train. Part 5 of patch 4.6. That's what Google Translate got out of patch 6.5. We are doomed. Oh, man. Yeah, and then there's a two-part main story, part 10 and part 1. Yeah, the numbers get messed up almost more than anything else. So much so that on 4Gamer, the site actually auto-translated to 1Gamer. So I don't know why the numbers get messed up more than anything else. But everything else, like this time we asked producer and director Naoki Yoshida about the contents of patch 6.5 introduced in the live letter from Las Vegas. Also heard details such as Crystalline Conflict and Fall Guys collaboration that weren't talked about. That translates perfectly fine. So that's what I based off using this one for. So first, they just go over kind of the fluff pieces. We have to get these through the interviews because they're kind of standard. They talk about the main scenario of 6.5, about how it's split into two parts. And there's going to be the end of one story and the beginning of the next. So they talk about, how essentially the Void story is coming to its close in part 1. And then, of course, part 2 is going to be focusing more on the actual lead into Dawn Trail. Talk a lot about Zero here and Zero's story and what they actually mean for everything. They talk about how it's been developed alongside some of the other stories and just kind of examples of how they developed the stories. As a meaning for Zero as a character, it also means it'll be the starting point for 7.0, so I hope you can feel multiple nuances from the entire patch. So yeah, as we've already known and been told, so nothing really new there. The trailer was released the other day. I wonder when this interview was actually from. I think it might have said at the top. I thought there was a big gap between the story in the 13th that is currently underway and the fact that we have Dawn Trail. Will the ongoing story be completed in 6.5? The answer to the question depends on what is concluding. Like, for example, the 13th is a world that's been completely swallowed. I don't think it'll return to a world full of greenery and life. So essentially saying, like, the Void's not fixed. It's not suddenly just like a plot line that's finished and done, and we don't need to worry about it. However, Zero as a character is going to be now on pause, is now going to conclude their story of what they've been developing for these patches. That is going to finish. They're not going to, it's just their story for now, but either way, that part is going to be done. I don't think you'll feel like I'm going to the new continent if you leave in a half-hearted state. So of course I made a beautiful break that will satisfy everyone. The main quest in 6.5 is divided into part 1 and part 2, and the main scenario is also divided in 2 parts. I think it was difficult to get the feel at FanFest for Dawn Trail, because it was only held once online due to the influence of the coronavirus. This time the story progresses little by little with the idea of Jet Black, that's Shadowbringers. There's a FanFest for Europe, there's Japan. Basically saying that much like with Shadowbringers, unlike Endwalker, they now have the ability to do multiple FanFests leading in. And again, the numbers getting messed up. We're headed to 2.7. It's so weird how it gets messed up. I think that all he's saying is that the flow of information this time going into Dawn Trail should be a lot better because we are going to have all the physical fan fests. The first world will be the stage, so saying that we're going to the new world. I'm sure a lot of people are looking forward to it. There's a certain volume of stories on the first world side. It's good to go to the new world, but it's not like I'm going back right away. If you take a bird's eye view, the new world is a world that was about to Oh, he's talking about the first. Sorry, he's talking about going back to the first for Zero's story. Yeah, gotta translate between the translations here. Yeah. We're going back to the first, getting to see things there. The 13th world was destroyed by the flood of darkness, but the first is one step ahead, where the extreme saturation of light was suppressed by the warrior of darkness, and they're trying to restore balance. Hope you look forward to what they're doing in 6.5 while guessing the purpose of visiting and what kind of story is to be told. All right, moving forward. This is just talking about the dungeon real quick. seems to reproduce the last dungeon of Final Fantasy IV. That's all they're really talking about. It's the last major pre-expansion dungeon, the last major pre-expansion update. It's only a small part what we saw in the screenshot. There's something waiting for you, so that will please those who like past works. Essentially saying that, the Lunar Subterranean is going to have its references. No surprises there. Very happy if we could take a closer look at the direction and journey, especially through this dungeon. We've already finished making adjustments for the release. The new battle is against Zeramis. They say that it's not only an enemy that the players will recognize, but the development side also have a strong affection for Final Fantasy IV. How do you proceed with a project when combining 14 with past titles? Essentially asking, how do you do the fan service? How does the team actually approach it? There's been a lot of people who haven't been a big fan of the Final Fantasy IV fan service. I've even heard some people equate it somewhat to Omega. I have my own takes on that because I feel like they may have ventured a little too far at some points, but that it's been more tasteful in the means of Final Fantasy III. Because you really don't need to know the story of Final Fantasy IV to enjoy this. They made sure they're developed within 14. There's just so much of it, and it's so in your face that it's kind of hard to see between the lines or feel as much affection for these very short-term characters that they've been rapidly introducing and removing while giving us a bit of backstory. It's very difficult to distinguish between homage and reproducing the exact thing. I'm the most picky about that, but the elements of the past games that appear in 14 are just homages, and the main duty is to make fans of the past games grin, and the characters from the past series do not appear as they are. I often say that even if there are words in their way of thinking and speaking that are reminiscent of characters from past games, it is important to match the words spoken by the characters in the world of 14 with purpose. It is different to create a story just because you want them to say those words. Yeah, essentially saying that they have to make sense in 14's world. The things they say, the things they do, they have to fit in Final Fantasy XIV. They can't just be the Final Fantasy IV counterparts in their entirety. 14's position within the franchise is that of a theme park, so you have to take a close look at each element of the various series. If you don't do that, you tend to think you should just put out the boss for the time being. You should put out this character for the time being. Phone, now's not the time. I'm in the middle of a recording. It's something important, but you know what? You're important to me. So I'm going to silence my phone so that doesn't happen again. Anyway. So yeah, this is all standard stuff. I mean, we've been around, those of us who have been around long enough know that they want these things to make sense within the realm of Final Fantasy XIV. Mostly. Omega, a bit of an excuse, but yeah, we'll see. Let's see. For example, in the case of Final Fantasy IV, Takashi Tokita, Final Fantasy IV's game designer, is still active in the company. So they gave the plot to Tokita-san to check it out and explain that I would like to use it as a character that is very different from the original and unique to 14. Mr. Tokita is a great idea man, so sometimes I received ideas the other way around when it came to music production. He wrote a poem in the form of writing the lyrics again, and we were allowed to work together on the latest arrangements. That's why 14 is a premise of making it with a focus on the uniqueness of 14. Yeah, this is all standard stuff. This is what I mean by these are like the fluff pieces where there's not really like a whole lot to digest in terms of new information. Regarding Zeramis, if you cut out only the battles, you want to reproduce the background of the battle stages. Wonder if what the meaning of this color is on the 14 side. The original battle stage is something like blue, outer space flows at high speed. When you hear blue haze flowing at high speed in 14, you inevitably imagine ether. However, the 13th world is a world that's been drunk by darkness. There's no return of ether, so it's a strange image. Homage to the work is different. I pay a lot of attention to that, not just 4, but all the titles. Yeah, I mean, this is literally just going into every single thing they've done. He talks about 13 and 15 with the collaborations, 15 wandering into the world. Noctis being in there. It's just, there's all sorts of things that are here. They're just going over all the collaborations. Players are familiar with past titles. I did everything, but there were some ambiguities. I'm happy that everyone... No, I'm happy, actually. You're Yoshi P. Development team wants to cross the homage line. I don't do it consciously, but sometimes I just want to go there because everyone is happy. No, I'm happy. I said, no, don't go this far. That's true for the ones I'm releasing now, and I'm very concerned about the things I'm going to make in the future. What kind of references are you doing in the future that you're that concerned about? Now I'm concerned. Difficult to draw the line between... it's not supposed to say homage and homage. It's between homage and recreation. It's like what Yoshi P said earlier. Leading the team for a long time as producer and director, the yardstick for these subtle nuances tend to be personal. The leader understands quite a lot, but when a new staff member emerges and says, I'll leave this content to you, the motivation is too high and crosses the line. Therefore, it's easy to say, no, no, no. It's like a road that everyone goes through at least once. Yeah, where people have to stop themselves from crossing the line of just completely recreating something. It was through exchanges. It was through such exchanges that Zero Miss was created. First, the lighting and background were too close to the original, so we made a major rebuild after a long time with a retake, and we are still in the process of making adjustments. Everything is put together, but we are making adjustments to properly incorporate the use of colors and flowing air into the 13th world. Yeah, it's fun. It's interesting to hear that they're concerned about those things because they wouldn't match up lore-wise to the 13th. Like, those things shouldn't really be there unless something is willing them, you know, like Barbaricha with her wind or something in that capacity. So it's actually kind of interesting to hear that they're worried about the air flowing even, because it shouldn't be that way. Also, they asked briefly about Asura, who is available at FanFest, just asking when Asura is exactly planned to be incorporated. They said that other contents will be released as 6.5x in addition to what was announced. We are expecting the 16 collab. We know about the Fall Guys collab. Expect probably some returning collabs. I wouldn't be surprised. And the Asura battle as well, which I think we know where it's going to be, but we'll have to wait and see. Whether to add Asura at 6.55 or to use it for more detailed patch numbers like 6.57 or 5.8 will be adjusted based on the situation. In any case, it'll be out before 7.0. Now we have the extra quests. The Friendship Tribe quest extra story is back. Allied Beast Tribe quests. But did you receive a lot of requests? Yes, we received more requests than we expected. Yes, because we didn't have one in Shadowbringers. It was so disappointing to not have them. Received a lot of feedback that they wanted to see the extra quest there. Extra stories are truly extra story, which can only be played by those who have completed several of the Beast Tribes or the tribal quests, now as they're called, and do not have any particularly large rewards, but since they are mainly story-based, the text and directing costs are high. In the case of 14, it's because all the content is properly created with a story and a meaning. It's also the time when the expansion package begins to be created, which is difficult. All right, so just saying that while they need to dedicate the resources to this, they're also dedicating resources towards the next expansion. So just one of those things where it comes at a really unfortunate time to want to do something kind of grandiose where you combine all of these stories that you've had overarching throughout the entire expansion. I get that, but like, it's one of those things where when you have it for every expansion and then you don't have it for one, it's very noticeable. Same thing happened with Hildebrand. I don't think anyone thought there was going to be a mass demand for Hildebrand coming back in Shadowbringers. But that's what happened. There was one reference to him, and all the people who really liked it got really loud about it because it was not there. And so they brought it back, and honestly, I'm kind of glad they took the break because they've done a lot better when it comes to the Endwalker Hildebrand class. This time we listened to everyone. The scenario team managed to control their task for almost a year to make it happen. Now that we have a friendly tribe called the Lepolites. I love Google Translate so much. The Loperites that everyone loves, in the sense that they will connect each friendly tribe. But yeah, the Loperites are basically like half of the Omicron quests anyway, because they're part of that trio of allies. I think this will also be the end of the Heidelin Zodiac edition of the tribal quest. The tribal quest in Dawn Moon, is that the Endwalker? That might be what Endwalker translates to. Was also a story of hope, so by connecting it again, it would become a big circle, so I had a strong desire to implement it somehow. The main story is the story, but I think it was a good story, so I hope you will play it. Of course, even if you haven't cleared prerequisites right now, if you still increase your friendship level in the daily tribe quests, I think you'll be able to do it in time and enjoy it. Yeah, it doesn't take that long as you focus only on the Endwalker ones. I like how Omicron is completely correct, but Loperit is Lepolite. Oh, man. Both Omicron and Loperit have a strong afterthought-like element. It feels like a complete chapter by doing everything. As for the rewards, I think I get good things like dancing every time. Is there something like that for this as well? Of course, it's not just a story. It's a modest reward, but we're preparing well this time. I'd actually say that across all of the things they've made in the game, the Tribal Quest has never had a complaint about rewards. They're very simple to do. You can get them done in a few weeks. The mounts and the outfits and everything. They've even retroactively in the past gone back and added outfits to the old Tribal Quest. They've always treated them really well and with a lot of respect. And it probably helps having something so themed. So I'm not even worried about that because the allied quests are kind of just the cherry on top, but they've also had good rewards historically, even if, as they've said, modest. Now, next they talk about the 24-man, and they just talk about how, Yoshi P thinks the newest one is the most gorgeous map. He thinks this is probably the most complete in terms of maps. It is made including animation of background objects, picture changes. Doesn't mean gimmicks, but in terms of directing, I think the quality is probably quite high among the Alliance raids so far. Yeah, he talks up Thalia a lot about how much more impressed he is. And that says a lot, given that we've had some insanely good scenes and images and everything, like the moving islands in Euphrosyne and whatnot. So I think that's been the highlight. While these have been not exciting raids in terms of gameplay mechanics, they've been masterpieces in terms of art and direction. So I'm glad to hear that he thinks that element they're already strong in, that it's going to be strongest here, because it's impressive. And it goes a long way to make doing them again, despite the bosses being kind of meh. In terms of, like, you know, they're not as exciting as, like, Ivalice, for example, like, on release. But they're still fun to go back and do, you know, just for that one particular thing. This time there will be gods. These translations, man. The gods Rimlane and Saryak. Google Translate. Oh my god, Google Translate does not know what to do with the 12's name. I don't even know what they're saying when they say that. Rimlake and Saryak. All right, that's it. We've got the 2 of the 12, Rimlake and... I'm never gonna... Rimlane, sorry. That remind us of the sea... Oh, okay, so okay, that's Limlane and Thalia because of the... Yeah, they're the water element ones. You know what? Actually, Rimlane kind of makes sense that it would Google Translate to that. That actually checks out now. And Thaliak becoming sorry. Actually, yeah, both of those do kind of make sense when they go through like Google Translate, which isn't very high end. That's not that surprising anymore. I think the ocean or water has met your expectation. Please note that the water will be used for gimmicks. Of course it will be. Oh. Anyway, I think the difficulty level is moderate in each complete episode. How difficult is it this time? I'm glad they asked this. Right now, my tentative group check and the 24-person test centered on the battle team have been completed, but the final 24-person test, which includes the community team and publicity team, is yet to be completed. So it is difficult to comment on the difficulty. Even though there are 24 people on the development team who are new to the team, they're all getting better, so it's really hard to find a drop. All I'm getting is that their community team and publicity teams don't play the game very much. Because I sincerely doubt they've amped it up to the point where it feels something more like, you know, Weeping City or Dunskaith or the Ivalice. I doubt that. I'm willing to bet that they just have the internal team, which is, you know, of course, really good at it. But they also have teams that with less experience go in and have to do it. And that testing's not done yet. So what we're saying is it could also just be too hard at the moment in their development for their own taste. They might want to make it easier, which I hope they find a better balance for this one, but I'm not super optimistic. Even if you first see it, if you're used to playing 14, you can deal with it. Yeah, that's generally how 24-mans work for the most part. Probably because we have unified the markers, there's a point where you should move like this for the time being. I don't really like first look killing. He means he doesn't like people killing it on the first pull. I don't think it's essential to die and remember for the time being. 0 and 0 are different. Don't know what that means. But after checking the contents with a marker and a debuff, I was able to respond based on a prediction that maybe this would happen. I like the feeling of moving forward, like if you can't do it, then this is what you want to do. I think all the bosses are working well together this time. In Alliance raids, 3 bosses are the strongest. 3's bosses are the strongest every time, and if you can break through the third boss, I think it means the third boss, I think you can do well. But this time there are various things, and the 4 bosses are a little strong. So essentially, when it says 3 bosses, I'm almost certain what the translate means is the third boss. And that is true very often when we remember the bosses of 24-mans. The third boss is the one that gets a lot of the credit. I mean, you have Math Boss, you have Ozma, you have Lady Skathik. Like, you have... Those bosses more often represent problem points for even just 24-mans and us. Now, it's not exclusively. I mean, Ivalice has, like, Hashmal and stuff like that. Yeah, Asmat always causes problems. Thunder God Sid, though, you know, another third example. So I understand what he means by that. But he actually thinks the 4th boss here is a little bit on the higher side, too, compared to the 3rd boss. So that would put it probably in more Diablos range, who Diablos Hollow did cause a lot of problems. And even Ultima, a tiny, tiny bit. But... either way, they're 24-man bosses. I just want them to be a little bit better balanced than the other ones. They don't need to be, like, difficult, you know, just fun. Does that mean both the third and fourth bosses are strong? Well, they're two bosses, but I think the fourth boss is probably the strongest. In other Alliance raids, Diablos, the second boss was probably the strongest. And really, the two Diablos bosses, yeah. But it may be a little closer in terms of that strength. Yeah, he even draws the direct comparison to Diablos and Diablos Hollow, so maybe it is closer to that. I think that's a better place to be. So that I'll be judging that based on this statement, but I know that sometimes the boss difficulty gets oversold or undersold between second and final coil. Words that I'll never forget. You had three bosses over there. Before tackling Talia, I think it would be good to review the first and second installments of the series. Okay. Now we have the variant and Criterion dungeons. The first question is how the implementation speed for the variant dungeons has been so fast. And it's just because they use a lot of systems that are already built into the game over the last 10 years to combine it together. So under the hood, the actual combat elements are not that difficult to set up because they've already had to develop things like bonus actions for Eureka and Bozja. They mentioned that here. And then they're already used to their usual combat stuff and developing bosses. So the devs go into it a lot more in another interview that I covered, so we probably don't need to go over too much about the actual development of these. Basically, the only thing he mentions here is map designs and resource orders. That those are the things that kind of take a little bit here. For map design and resource orders, when we were making the second phase, the third one was already ordered, saying the second variant and the third variant. So for us, it is proceeding as planned. It's also possible because the team and the person in charge control the task very cleanly. So I won't be able to release one every patch in the future, but the timing is definitely better than... interesting. Better than Matosha. So Matosha is... specifically, that's the auto translate to what's his face that we're going to the new island with. So it's saying that the release schedule for Variant and Criterion should be better in Dawn Trail than it was here, where we had the 0.2, 0.4, and 0.5. So I like that the translation almost makes it seem like he's blaming Matsuya for this. If you are playing this right now, it doesn't matter if it's slow, so please do it when you have time and your hands are free. It is elaborate and interesting, but I can't tell you much about the story. Some of it has to do with foreshadowing. Just looking forward to going on adventures with Matsuya again. It's a strangely popular character. When will it be implemented in the future? Not every patch, but we release it at the right time. What does that mean? For example, in combination with the Deep Dungeon, we may open 3 patches next time, but I don't think we will have to wait that long in terms of frequency. The way that translates isn't entirely clear. It almost makes it seem like, so we may open 3 patches next time. Makes it seem like it's still going to be another 3, but it might be like the first 3 instead of the last one, or maybe they just don't want to release one at the same time as a Deep Dungeon, for example. So either way, they're just saying that the release frequency in Dawn Trail should be better, or might be better. Variant's easy to play alone, so it's quite popular, and they say, yeah. Now, this is the big thing they go into. For the difficulty for Criterion, so 0 formula is Criterion. That's just like the weird translation that it has. The rewards are a bit weak, so I understand that some people want a little more. Not really a little, but that's fine. In the third phase, although it is just a test case, we are trying to prepare it at the last minute to see if we can strengthen the reward on the Criterion side a little more. It's a bit of a special response, but I'd like to hear feedback on that as well. So to take another translation, Yoshida more specifically says something that is easier to show off. So the biggest problem right now with the Savage part of Criterion is that the item is an indoor housing item. It is not something that you can really showcase. At least with like Deep Dungeon, you would get like an outdoor, like Palace has the fireball and the glass eye and all that stuff. So, but these you just stick in your apartment. So something like a fashion accessory would be easier to show off. Something like another mount would be something that'd be easy to show off. Something that's like an actual body piece, just a glam piece would be easier to show off. So it sounds like for this particular case, we're not getting anything like gear, which I think was optimistic, like overly optimistic to think that at the end of the expansion, they were going to bother with that. Probably just unlock everything at that point. Wouldn't hurt to put it in there, but I don't think many people were expecting it here at the end of the expansion. That being said, the feedback that it should happen next expansion should not stop, even if we like the reward that comes from this. It's very unlikely that this is going to sate even remotely the number of people who actually played the content and didn't like the reward structure versus the people who don't play it but still have something to say for some reason. Who knows? So hoping that we can continue that line of feedback, and I highly encourage that line of feedback about adding rewards. And I think they even mention that in one of the other translations that they need to balance the rewards a little bit more and see what works. And in fact, in the interview that I covered the other day. So anyway, moving on, Crystalline Conflict, new map will be released. Just wanted to ask about that new map. Let's see. The Palestra is one complete form. The theme is to focus on how to change the battle situation with gimmicks, and so to create something a little bit different from the other maps. They're still working on the gimmick for the new Crystalline Conflict map, and he doesn't want to say anything now because it's going to make them nervous. It's going to make them think that it could be too extreme or not enough. So they're going to finish the adjustments later this month. They are working on the frequency, the inhibition of behavior, the damage they receive. All the elements are still in balance, so he doesn't want to talk about it too much. Let's see. I think it's difficult for complete beginners to suddenly get into matching with people in Crystalline Conflict. I think it'd be easier if there was a mode where you could practice against NPCs first. Yoshida's like, mock battles with NPCs aren't that easy. If the game design were FPS, there'd still be ways to do it, but no. He's wondering if something like that could even be done, and doesn't really think there's a great way of going about it. Trying to create an image of what I need in my head is considered things that are like, ease people in, like a beginner's house for PvP. It's just quite difficult to make like a mock battle that actually makes people feel like they're getting prepared. Hypothetically, the simplest fist fight with an NPC, would you be able to understand it? It isn't difficult to try this way outside of practice. Essentially saying that he's like, I'm overthinking it, but I feel like all the basics of 14 should be able to be done without an explanation, like it is in PvE. It's just things like the defensive aspects, that are kind of unique to PvP, where you need to learn how to time the guard and when to use your kits and how to understand when to go back for your MP. And that kind of stuff is not going to be properly conveyed in a mock battle. Whether they're stationary NPCs or they're like programmed to do certain things. He's just saying that it's not, he can't really envision how to make a mock battle in PvP make someone more comfortable or actually learn what they need to going into PvP. In FPS games, there are modes where you can practice endlessly against bots, for example. Yeah, he understands that, but it's like how an FPS does it is way different than the way that we would have to do it. They're focused on PvP, and not that we don't want to be focused on it, like we could focus more on it on that front, but it's still like really, really tough to figure that out. Yeah, I think it'd be kind of, I don't think it would be helpful at all to have an NPC mock battle. I think people might enjoy just doing, like, people who do bot matches in League of Legends, for example. Like, there are people who exclusively log into League of Legends to play against bots. And that's all they do. And they maybe like get groups of friends together and just mess around against bots. Like, I've known people personally that do that kind of stuff. But I don't think that works here necessarily the same way. I don't think there's like a power fantasy behind stomping bots back in the day. And now I don't think that would exist in Final Fantasy XIV. So, now some information on the Fall Guys collaboration. It is multi-map. I honestly didn't have complete hope. Like, I understood that they were going for the whole Fall Guys thing, but in my head, I was like, oh, they're just going to do one map. Like, I was just like, if you survive, you survive. That'll probably be the end of it. No. So, they say, normally in Fall Guys, it's several stages in a row, how many people are left. So, but what kind of system is 14's going to have? So, Yoshida confirms we are reproducing the fact that there are multiple maps and the number of people is gradually decreasing with each map. There's even a stage in Fall Guys where you just have to make sure you don't fall within the time limit. Now, that makes sense in Fall Guys, but in 14, we don't have hit detection. You can't grab other players and, like, shove them off. So, I think that interfering with the game by hit judgment is one of the fun things about Fall Guys, but we can't do that in 14. So, we have to come up with things that are more unique to 14 to offset that. So, instead, you'll have a lot of familiar gimmicks, and it can also be gimmick practice. And you know what? That makes sense. Slice of Life, or the Slice is Right, sorry, is honestly one of the hardest gates in the game. And all it is reading animations and dodging AoEs. And it genuinely is good practice for some people on a very simple, basic thing in Final Fantasy. Fall Guys emulating that is probably a good idea since they can't properly do the whole grab and throw thing. If you step on a specific floor, an acceleration bomb will suddenly hit or fall. Even if you make Fall Guys as it is, then you can play Fall Guys. I hope that players from both games will feel the fun and essence from both games, and then will come and go. Alpha Noah and Alice say, I learned that this is actually how their katakana makes it spelled. I thought it was funny, but apparently that's an accurate, translation from the katakana. The development team of Fall Guys also has plenty of 14 players. They receive requests for Alpha Noah and Alice. This is basically just saying why Alpha Noah and Alice are in the Fall Guys side of the collaboration. So this isn't really relevant to us. It's just kind of background as to how that decision was made, as you can see right here. Recently played 16 and found it interesting. I've seen people streaming 14 and 16. There's a lot of people who came to 16 because they played 14. Many people who came to 14 because they played 16, and I hope they enjoy both. You mentioned earlier about collaborations with 13 and 15, but will Clive come to the world of 14 in the collaboration with 16? If we were to do something, I think it would be impossible to have a 16 collaboration without Clive because Final Fantasy 16 is Clive's story. I hope to see you in the world of 14 as soon as possible. Yoshida just talks a little bit about how difficult the modeling is going to be. They did it for Noctis back on the PlayStation 4 when the PlayStation, at the time of Noctis, it was still a PlayStation 4 game, so I managed to do it. Be a shame if he came here, but he were a different person. So it sounds like they might have to slightly change Clive's look to make it make more sense in 14 because they cannot perfectly create his fidelity model within the game itself. So that's all they're saying here. But in case you missed it, Yoshida has confirmed that they are doing a 16 collab. There's no official details, and they hope to share them before year's end. There's just a little bit more background on that stuff. And finally, a message for the 10th anniversary for players new and old to Final Fantasy XIV, to all the fans. Of course, after overcoming the coronavirus pandemic around the world, it has not disappeared, but we have finally been able to return to the point where we can physically hold FanFest. Yeah, just don't let any furry comic book makers into the show next time. Or you might get a 10-page comic that is not the most popular amongst the community out of that one. And now the first FanFest in North America is over. We have taken a breather and are heading on to the next one. We were able to celebrate our 10th anniversary with the engine at full throttle thanks to support of the players around the world. Also, I think that the development team, community team, marketing team, and PR team have all worked hard to play for the players and make as many people as possible play. I hope that 14 has been around for a long time and that people will feel the power that comes from the passion that everyone has put into it for the next expansion. Not only in-game, but also the 10th anniversary of New 14, A Realm Reborn. Various real events and measures are also in the works. There are some things that have not yet been released, so whether you are inside or outside the game, you will be able to experience what 14 is all about. I hope you enjoyed it at full throttle, including the flow up to FanFest. Also, this year we are talking about exhibiting 14 at Tokyo Game Show. So that gives us, they're talking about it. That tells us this was before we knew when the live letter was. For the first time in a long time. I would like to go there for the first time in a long time and create an opportunity to talk with everyone. In addition to FanFest, I would like to listen to the voices of players at various opportunities to make the game even better. I hope you continue to enjoy it and look forward to your continued support. And that is the interview roundtable, an approximation. There might be a few different translations or small details from the other ones that might be worth adding in, but going through Google Translate to figure out what those are, maybe we don't want to do that for 3 or 4 different sites after some of the things that we saw translated here. So, all the same, we know they're looking at Criterion rewards. We heard this from the devs that work on Criterion as well. We are looking at more frequent releases for certain content, specifically for Variant Dungeon and Criterion Dungeon going into Dawn Trail, and just some of the background into some of the contents they're making here at the end of Endwalker as well. But that is going to be a wrap for the JP Media interviews for Final Fantasy XIV that just released today. So I've got to go get to trying to finish Lies of P, so I'm going to wrap up this video here and get it going. So thank you for watching. If you're here live on Twitch, thank you for watching on YouTube. Be sure to like, favorite, subscribe, and share over there. And I'll see you all in the next video. Until then, take care.